Senator Chambers, you're recognized to open on LB 472.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, after the tenacious questioning of Senator Stootman, after the flaming passion of Senator Snickey, my bill is going to be less than anticlimactic. It does a very simple thing. It properly designates the individuals who are members of the Commission of Industrial Relations. Formerly, this commission was known as the Court of Industrial Relations. In 1979, the name was changed to Commission. An attempt was made to change the name of the members to commissioners. I opposed changing that designation from judges to commissioners. That was nearly 3 decades ago, and at that time there was even more hostility to labor openly expressed than is the case now. My feeling was that changing the Court of Industrial Relations to a commission was the first step toward trying to gut it. So even though the body did that, I and Senator Landis, I believe was the other one, maybe some others spoke, prevented the name of the members from being changed to commissioners from judges. That was to allow a measure of credibility to attach to this commission. In 1979, the Nebraska Supreme Court ruled that the Commission of Industrial Relations is not a court. It cannot carry out judicial functions, that it is an administrative agency performing a legislative function. Since the Supreme Court made that declaration, there can be no argument that the Commission is a court in any sense, or that its members are judges in any sense. If you call up the statement of intent, you will see where I mentioned various state commissions, all of which have members known as commissioners. I pointed out activities which judges carry out, the ethical code to which judges are subject, but these commissioners are not. What this body has to determine is whether or not we're going to give the proper designation to people who sit on a commission, or if we're going to leave a misnomer there for whatever reason somebody may have for wanting to do that. As a legislature, we should call things what they are when we're going to deal with them. A commissioner simply is not a judge. Commissioners are appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the legislature. That is not how judges are appointed. The legislature has no role whatsoever to play in the appointment of judges. They are appointed by the governor when names are submitted to them by that judicial selection committee or whatever it was called that you all talked about this morning. Judges are removed by the Supreme Court when necessary if they have violated the Code of Judicial Conduct to such an extent that they are unfit to continue serving as judges. These commissioners are removed by the governor, not the Nebraska Supreme Court. There is no shred of evidence or rational argument that would justify referring to commissioners as judges. They simply are not. If you adopt my amendment, you change none of the activities of the commission. You neither add to nor take from the duties or authority or powers that they now enjoy. you do nothing other than calling them what they are. Cindy, the lady who works with me, has one of the most delightsome miniature poodles, toy poodles, that you will ever see in your life. And I really like her. But if I liked her so much that I would call her Tyrannosaurus Rex, she still remains a delightsome, lovely, lovable toy poodle. So calling these commissioners judges only misleads the public and everybody else as to what they are. I'm going to listen to the discussion, and if the body believes and establishes that such is their belief, that commissioners ought to be called judges, I'm going to offer an amendment to name every member of every commission a judge. Either all people who are on commissions are commissioners, or we will mislabel all of them. I'm sure that the commissioners on the athletic commission would love to be called judges. I'm sure that the members of the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission would especially love to be called judges. But such ought not to be done. Words have meaning. Words in statute carry even more meaning. And if, as a favor to people who may sit on the commission, or to those who appear before that commission because they want to feel that they're engaging in some kind of activity which ought to be presided over by a real judge, that is not a reason for us to misname these individuals. If I thought that calling them judges and renaming the commission a court would in fact make it a court, maybe I would change my mind. But the Nebraska Supreme Court, reviewing what this operation does, has said it is not a court. It does not carry out judicial functions. So if people get up on this floor, as some did before the committee, and say, well, they hear evidence, they weigh the evidence and make a decision, the Nebraska Supreme Court knew all of that. Any agency that resolves disputes takes evidence, weighs it, arrives at a decision. If they tell you that a decision from this commission can be appealed to the appellate court of the Supreme Court, that can be done after certain stages of consideration with decisions from other bodies in this state that make decisions. So I'm going to listen to the debate, and I hope I have not left any stone unturned, because I'm not trying to mislead you or deceive you as to what it is I'm trying to do. But if anything is unclear, lay it on me. We shouldn't let the session end with a whimper after the passion of Senator Snickey. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. You've heard the opening to LB 472. The floor is now open for discussion. We have Senator Ashford, followed by Senator Carlson. Senator Ashford.
Me to a T. I was on the Court of Industrial Relations. You remember that, Senator Chambers. And once a judge, always a judge. The thought of not being a judge anymore, or past judge, does this affect, let me ask you, Senator, if we change this to commissioner, can I still say that I was a judge, or do I have to say I was a commissioner?
He had to turn on the mic. Senator Ashford, at the time that false flag flying over that body, you were incorrectly designated a judge, so you are justified in referring to yourself as a former judge.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Chambers. Well, answers my concern. As long as I can still call myself a judge/senator, you know, when I go around the town and I can say all that I have all these things, then I'm okay with this. I do agree with Senator White that the
And would you comment on their reasoning and perhaps further on the opposition from the Court of Industrial Relations?
I believe, and I stated this at the hearing, that the NSEA objected because I was bringing the bill. They have officially voted to take positions against a piece of legislation that I helped get enacted into law. I pointed out to their lobbyists that this bill has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with wages, hours, conditions of labor, and there was nothing that impacted the NSEA whatsoever. He talked for a good while, and he may have said things. I wish other members of the committee might try to relate what he said, because I don't want to misrepresent it. But there was nothing he said that suggested that my changing this bill, this designation as I'm trying to do, would any way impact what NSEA can do before that commission, how their issues will be handled, that it would cause the commissioners not to be as careful as they have ever been. Nothing of substance was stated by their lobbyists other than that they're opposed to the change. The gentleman who spoke for the commission expressed similar ideas to that of Senator White, that they like being called judges, that there was more in the way of, and I don't want to give a word and misrepresent him, but I'll try to describe what I understood him to say. If he is referred to as a judge, then it carries more weight in the minds of the public than if he were called a commissioner. And my response was that he is to do nothing different as a commissioner from what he does as a judge, since there is a relatively discreet and small group who come before that commission. They will know that it is not changed in any way. And that's the best that I can do in trying to relate to you what that opposition was in a nutshell. And you know what else comes in a nutshell? A nut.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. I yield the balance of my time.
Chambers.
Senator Chambers, would you yield?
Yes, I will. Ask away, counsel. And you can refer to me as Your Honor or Your Highness.
A board or commission that seems to be somewhat similar to this would be the Turk Board, the Tax Equalization and Review. Can you tell me what the members of that commission or board are?
The Turk Board? Well, I'd assume they're called turkeys.
Are they called judges?
I really don't know what they're called, but if they are board members, that's what they would probably be called.
Well, the official name of the commission is now the Tax Equalization and Review Commission, so it would be very much like the Industrial Relations Commission. But right offhand, you can't give me that. If somebody can,
Well, they probably would be called commissioners then. If that's the official designation, they would be called commissioners.
Well, now I understand that's the official designation of the Industrial Relations Commission, but they're called judges.
Right, because at first they were called the Court of Industrial Relations.
I'll yield the rest of my time.
Senator Chambers.
Are there other lights on, Mr. President?
No.
Then I will let this serve as my closing. Members of the legislature, now that this matter has been brought before the body, the vote will determine whether we are going to appropriately designate people as they ought to be designated based on the body of which they are members. There are a lot of people who would like to have other titles. And if I used a different kind of language, it's saltier. When Senator Whiteman asked me what are members of the Turk Board called, I could have designated them the way I've heard other people designate them, but I don't use that kind of language anywhere, and I certainly wouldn't use it on the floor here, and I don't necessarily share in those designations. But none of those would be official. We are taking an official action this morning. There was a guy who was of my complexion, sitting in a southern court, and this happened some decades ago, and people call us by titles that are high-sounding but designed to be insulting. Captain, colonel, judge, whatever. So this elderly black gentleman was sitting in the witness box, and the judge leaned over and said, "I understand you're called colonel." And the man swallowed hard because he thought he was going to be insulted by the judge like he is by everybody else, and he dared not show any displeasure, although it was rising up in him. The judge said, "You're called colonel?" And the man dropped his eyes and said, "Yes, Your Honor." He said, "Well, you're too old to have been in a current war, but even at your advanced age, you would have been too young to be in that war. So am I to understand that you never served in the military?" He said, "That's correct, Your Honor." He said, "Well, considering the fact that you are called colonel and you never served in the military, what does the designation colonel mean?" And before he could catch himself, the old man said, "Just what your honor means when it's attached to your name. It don't mean nothing." Sometimes people can be pushed to the point where what has been suppressed will come out. Calling these people judges is like calling somebody who never was in the military colonel. Maybe these people who call themselves judges like it. Former Chief Justice of the U.S., Rehnquist, used to wear chevrons on his sleeves to designate some kind of military status, I presume, and no judge had ever done that before. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was not adequate, so he had to have emblems that let people know, I'm a cut above everybody on this court and whoever sat on this court. So if you want these commissioners to be called judges, you have the opportunity to let the public know, and then you can explain to them why you're doing it. That's all that I have, Mr. President. All this bill does is designate the members of the Commission of Industrial Relations commissioners rather than judges. And we even passed a bill out of committee to give them a raise, even though their designation will be commissioners. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers.